Welcome back to my channel. It's me, Yeonni, and for this week's video we are doing another hashtag Ask Yeonni, where I've asked you all on Instagram to send me some questions. It's a pretty straightforward video, so I've gotten a few questions from you all, which I really appreciate. And if you would like to ask me more questions, please leave them down below in the comments of this video specifically so I can see them. I don't know if you noticed, but my video from last week, which thank you so much for all of your support, I've been pretty good about responding to everyone's comments, and I will be doing the same for this one in the next week or so, just to make sure I really answer those targeted questions. So make sure to leave them down below. I guess I don't need to ramble as much in this intro. Let's just get straight into answering your questions. What do you hope to do after your PhD? So the wonderful thing about a graduate degree, specifically a PhD degree, and why all of this labor and time and commitment I do believe is worthwhile, is that there's going to be lots of options. So I plan on, at least at this point of almost at the end of my third year of the PhD, my plan is to work in a hospital setting for a period of time. I think a period of time probably I don't know, we'll see, right? Depending on the hospital, depending on where I am in my life at that time with my personal life. We'll see, which is why I'm saying a handful, but I want some years of experience in an inpatient hospital setting. And then after that, my plan is to sort of roll back into a part-time position at a hospital where I see some patients, run some therapy groups, and I would love to really build up my private practice where I have my own individual therapy patients that I see. I think it'd be really cool to do pro bono work or use sliding scale and make therapy more affordable and have it be more of an equitable practice, at least when I get to do it under my own name and my own LLC, which is really exciting to think about. Part-time hospital work, and then part-time private practice under my own name, and also part-time something in the academic realm. I would love to lecture some classes. Representation, mentorship, visibility for Asian American clinicians is really important for me, so I want to be there, play a part in supporting future psychologists and therapists. I want to do that by maybe teaching an Asian American psychology course, really just being there to support future clinicians, so that excites me as well. So I guess I want to do a lot of things after I get my PhD. How to make the most of your NYU MSW program. When I first read this question, I sort of took it two ways, where in the program, when you're in it, how do you make the most of it? And after you graduate and you get your degree, how do you make the most of it? So for part one, when you're in the program, when I really sort of take myself back to 2016 to 2018 when I was at NYU Silver for my master's degree, I think the way I made the most of it was through the clinical field placements. As much as I enjoyed the classes at NYU, I'm learning a lot about multi-levels of oppression and social justice oriented way of doing therapy and clinical work and social work with clientele. I noticed that obviously a lot of the conversations in the realm was very academic, sort of in the ether and theoretical. So it was really in the field placement experience where I got to work directly with clients, interact with them, be working within the communities of New York City. And that was really wonderful to me. So I really threw myself into my field clinical placements as if it was my full-time job, took on more responsibilities, asked for more supervision, took on more clients and roles, and really kind of extended myself in that role because that's what I was hoping to be doing full-time afterwards, right? And realistically speaking, my time at NYU was not the best all the time. There were definitely some bureaucratic obstacles that I went through. So without getting too much into that, another way I made the most of my MSW experience was to advocate for myself when maybe supervisors were not the best, advocate for myself when I really wanted to get into an elective but maybe it was closed, maybe sending an email to the professor in a nice and respectful way, or seeing other opportunities to grow in that setting. I applied for conferences, I applied for different trainings, really making the most of the 2 years, because 2 years seems like a long time, but honestly, it flew by really quickly. So that's how I made the most of my MSW program. Once I graduated, I feel like the way I made the most out of that training and educational experience was just to throw myself into clinical work and, kind of roll up my sleeves and do the work. When you are a social worker, I mentioned this in some of my previous social work videos, but you get your MSW, so your Master's in Social Work, and when you get your license, then you are an LMSW. And at least in the state of New York, after a certain number of clinical hours after you get your initial license, usually it's like 3,000 clinical hours afterwards, you can actually take another exam and get an LCSW, where you become a licensed clinical social worker. And so I was working towards the LCSW, because once you have your LCSW, it sort of signals to the world, wherever you'll be applying to jobs afterwards, that you have a lot of clinical experience, so you can take more like managerial, supervisory, directorship roles. And I thought that was really important, because so much of social work is about not only helping clients one-on-one on like a micro level, but kind of dealing with like the meso, macro, systemic injustices that all trickle down and affect our clients. So that is how I also try to, make the most out of my MSW degree, where kind of having like a long-term plan where individual work with our clients one-on-one is so important. And also like, what more can I do? Can I kind of sign up for an outreach committee to try to do more outreach in my communities to get more people our services? And really thinking of care through a more systemic lens, I think was really important for me to make the most out of my degree and the education that I got. Are there any specializations in your program in a postdoctoral level? So for my program specifically, which is a counseling psychology PhD program at Columbia University, we do not have like a postdoctoral specialization or anything like that, but there are definitely postdoctoral specializations that you can do after you get your PhD in a PhD program. I have colleagues that have applied to postdoctoral fellowship positions in hospitals. There's also postdoctoral fellowship positions at like college counseling centers. I also have colleagues who took on like full-time teaching jobs at universities and are operating as a professor at universities after getting their PhD. And I have colleagues who are just fully doing their private practice, where they're seeing patients one-on-one through their own practice. So like I said in the beginning, one of the greatest things about having this degree is that there is going to be so many different options. You don't have to do a postdoctoral fellowship. You can if you want to. You can specialize in like psychoanalysis. New York City is huge for psychodynamic work, so there is like a psychoanalysis institute where you can get a 1-year fellowship there. So definitely a lot of options, but there is not one at my program, to answer your question specifically. I'm currently a student at Silver getting ready to take my LSW exam in New Jersey. What are some study tips you have to avoid burnout? I'm doing my placement and I'm also trying to keep sane. Is it possible to avoid burnout? You took me back to spring 2018, when I was exactly in the same shoes that you are in currently, trying to balance finals, all of the hoops you have to jump through to graduate, doing your placement, right? Seeing clients, wrapping up termination with clients, studying for the licensing exam, because I also took my licensing exam in New Jersey as well, just like you're doing now. So I have like a theoretical up here answer and like a more specific answer. I think burnout is almost like designed in our society, where there's so much emphasis on productivity, so much emphasis on multitasking. Especially as a graduate student, you are balancing so much, wearing so many different hats. It almost feels inevitable that we will all feel burnt out at a certain point, which I know is not like the lightest answer, but it feels systemic, it feels designed in our capitalistic society, so I have to just put that in my answer. But if we were to kind of be more specific for like any tips I might have had over my, I had 2 years at NYU, and then my 3.5 years of this PhD program, so already 5 years plus of graduate school experience. Some ways that I avoid burnout, especially with studying, because you're studying, I think what has helped me throughout the years to have some sort of balance is to intentionally, purposely schedule out rest and play. I think that's been really important. I'm a huge stickler of scheduling, of Google Calendar. I love being organized, using my calendar, color coding and all that jazz. At a certain point, I started feeling like rest was a privilege where I had to earn rest. But then like, where is the cutoff of, okay, I've worked this much, so now I get to rest? It's just so subjective and different for everyone in every context. So at a certain point, I was just not resting. So I think it's helped a lot to just schedule out, okay, Monday from 9 a.m. to noon where I'll eat lunch, I get to just rest. I get to maybe sleep in a little. I get to take my time getting ready. I get to catch up on some YouTube videos. And then noon, I eat lunch. And then from noon to dinner, I work. It's been really helpful to kind of compartmentalize, especially because research actually shows multitasking is not helpful. We're splitting our attention when we multitask, and we retain less information in that way. So for me, being intentional about this is my rest time, this is my work time on this specific topic, and being very specific on my calendar where like after lunch, from like 2 to 6, I am working on my cover letters for my next clinical placement. Being really specific with my tasks has been really, really helpful in trying to combat burnout, because I don't know if we can avoid it, but we can try to lessen it as much as possible, especially in the semester that you're in currently. It's a lot to balance. And also the kind of shifting that mentality of feeling like you have to earn rest and being like, no, you deserve rest because you are a human being. I think that's helped me a lot as well. So best of luck. How have you felt regarding your personal safety in the city given recent news? I generally have felt quite safe in New York City, and also just in general when I'm out and about in public, I am hyper vigilant and hyper aware of my surroundings. Like for example, I never have noise canceling earbuds in, and when I'm at the subway platform, I make sure to not stand by the edge and stand in the center. It's kind of sad, but that's sort of the reality that we live in, where it's so important to be looking out for yourself and being aware of your surroundings. I also carry a pepper spray in hand, especially when I'm walking home. I generally also don't like being outside when it's dark, so if I have to be, then I plan in advance. Maybe I don't eat out one day and use that for an Uber that I'll use for like a hangout with a friend a few days later. So I've been feeling pretty good and safe in New York City. You just have to be aware of your surroundings, know where you should be, where you shouldn't be, at what time, and buddy system at times too, split Ubers. That's been really wonderful to do with my friends. Have you had to work for extra money while in your PhD program? If so, what did you do for work? Most definitely. I noticed that you also asked a question about stipend and funding. How do you manage the PhD stipend? I heard they don't offer much and I'm scared. So I'll answer both of those right now. So I have had to work in my PhD program. We get $30,000 per academic year in my program. It used to be 25,000, but then I don't know what they did behind the scenes, but they gave us a little bit of a boost, which we very much appreciated as PhD students, especially because living in a city like New York City, 30,000 really barely covers rent and expenses. So I have had to do extra work. Certain work I've done is being a TA, so teaching assistant. Every semester since I've started the program, I've been working, even in the summers, teaching, just been a necessity. Also finding like interim school related work. Currently I'm the program ambassador for my PhD program, where I help the faculty with like behind the scenes admin, helping with open houses, answering emails of prospective applicants in the future, directing them to websites, and helping with like accreditation of our program. So technically, on top of this full-time PhD program and working at a clinic, I am having 2 part-time jobs just to get through. Other work that I know a lot of my colleagues have done is tutoring. That's been really wonderful for them. Working in coffee shops around the city, since there are a million in New York City, that's been a good work opportunity. And just like research opportunities that are paid, that are part-time. They're out there. It's important to do research, but inevitably I think, well, that's the thing. Everyone comes into PhD programs from different socioeconomic backgrounds. I do know colleagues who do not have to work on the program, but I also know colleagues who have had to work multiple jobs and also take out additional loans just to get through the 5-year program in this city. So yeah, it is a lot to balance. And how I manage the PhD stipend is, so in the beginning of every semester, we get a direct deposit of the amount. And so I've been managing with a Google spreadsheet where I start with the total amount and then I calculate what my monthly expenses are, and I see that money go down every month, which is really stressful, but I just try to stretch it out until the next stipend deposit. It's worked well enough so far. Sometimes emergencies happen. Sometimes Columbia's like, hey, you have to pay us $3,000 for health insurance. Sorry, forgot to tell you. Last summer, you make do. I always try to have at least like 2 months of expenses calculated into my initial calculations. That way, if emergencies like that happen, I can get by. But it's a lot of just penny pinching and being careful. You make do. It's possible for sure, but it is pretty stressful. Do you have any advice for PhD interviews? They're coming up soon and I hope I get one. I have an entire dedicated video based on this topic, PhD interviews, coming up next week. Not to tease you or anything, but I just had one planned. So I would definitely say check out that video. But if I could say one thing in this video would be, it's important to prepare in advance for your interviews, not only just research-wise, but I would say rehearse. Kind of do a little mock role play of what the interviewer might ask you and what your answers would be, and practice out loud. That is one thing I'll say again next week, but I'll say today as well. So important to rehearse, do some role playing, say things out loud, and kind of listen to how you sound when you answer these questions. And that's it for your questions for this video. Thank you so much for sending them in. Please be sure to put some more questions down in the comments below if you have them. I'll be sure to answer them the best I can. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you have not yet done so. Next week's video will be, like I said, about how to get through those PhD interviews, because I know that season is coming up for a lot of you who are applying. Our program's interview day is February 6th, so it blows my mind that we'll have another round of PhD students joining our program, and I'll be a 4th year. Time just flies so quickly. I hope this video was helpful. I hope you take care of yourselves emotionally, physically, mentally, in all of those very important ways, and I will see you in the very next video. Bye!